I had spent 8 long years tirelessly chasing after my fiancé, Adam, only to watch him remain infatuated with my younger sister, Mia. Completely disheartened, I gave up and turned to Brandon, a man who had secretly loved me for 7 years. Brandon adored me so much that he even tattooed my name on his tongue. His social media friends consisted solely of me. When I agreed to marry him, he was so moved that he broke down in tears. For a moment, I thought I had finally made the right choice. But on the night before our wedding, I overheard Brandon talking to his friend. "Do you even love Leah? Do you really want to marry her?" his friend asked. Brandon, his voice low and slightly slurred from alcohol, replied, "This is the only way Mia can be happy." His friend sighed deeply. "You're so devoted to Mia. You've loved her in silence for years. Even knowing she was in love with Adam, you let her marry him without a word. Then you chased after Adam's fiancée. And now you've succeeded. But at what cost? You're giving up your own happiness." Brandon's tone grew heavier, yet filled with emotion. "As long as Mia is happy, I don't care what happens to me." Hearing those words, I froze outside the door, as if struck by lightning. Brandon's 7 years of so-called love for me were a lie. The person he truly loved was Mia. He was willing to sacrifice his entire life just for her. How ironic. Everyone loves Mia. No one loves me. Leah. That night, I walked through the rain, crying until my heart felt torn apart. By dawn, I had made a decision. A few minutes later, I received a phone call. "Miss Leah, your purchase of the private island has been successfully processed. It's completely secluded, and no one will be able to find you there. The customized family you requested has also been arranged. They're professionally trained to provide you with unconditional love and care." I responded with a quiet okay. I decided to finalize everything within 30 days before leaving. Since childhood, my parents had always favored Mia. Now, even my two fiancés, Adam and Brandon, preferred her. No one loved me, so I would leave this world behind. I would move to the secluded island and start anew, with a family I created with my money. From now on, my parents, Adam, Brandon, none of them would exist in my world anymore. I began preparing documents and arranged to cancel my household registration, ensuring no one could track me down. But to my dismay, the most crucial document was at my parents' house. I had no choice but to return. When I entered, I saw my parents pacing anxiously in the living room. The moment they saw me, their expressions darkened. "Why are you here? You haven't been home in years. And now you suddenly show up? Why can't you learn from Mia? The two of you are sisters, but you're worlds apart." I had heard these words for over 20 years. Without a word, I went upstairs, retrieved the document, and prepared to leave. My calmness only made them angrier. "Do you even see us as your parents? You ungrateful, disrespectful child." As they continued yelling, the front door suddenly swung open. Brandon entered, carrying me in his arms. They froze when they saw me standing in the foyer. His intimate posture with her was unmistakable. I glanced at them briefly, then turned to leave. My indifference unsettled Brandon. He quickly put Mia down. "Leah, don't misunderstand. Mia sprained her ankle, so I carried her home." I had no interest in exposing his lie. Surrounded by my parents' concern, Mia added softly, "Adam has been away on a business trip lately. If not, I wouldn't have troubled Brandon. Sister, please don't take this the wrong way." Her words were more a boast than an explanation. "I've always been spoiled since I was little," she continued with a sweet smile. "A sprain hurts so much. Thankfully, Brandon ran through 10 red lights to rush me to the hospital and even carried me home. I've troubled him too much." She smiled at me, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. But my cold demeanor did not give her the satisfaction she sought. Mia rolled her eyes, clearly coming up with another plan. "Since you're already here, why don't you stay for dinner?" she suggested sweetly. No one asked for my opinion instead. They decided on my behalf that I would stay and eat. At the table, the spread was filled with spicy dishes, Mia's favorite. I wasn't surprised. I had once told my parents that I couldn't eat spicy food because of my sensitive stomach, but they only responded with sarcastic remarks. Back when I was with Brandon, he used to care about my preferences. He learned to cook dishes that were gentle on my stomach. But tonight, His attention was solely on Mia. Any small movement she made had him rushing to hand her napkins or serving her food. I suddenly remembered how, in the past, whenever Brandon came to visit me at my parents' house, his eyes would occasionally drift toward Mia. On her birthdays, he would subtly ask me what kind of gifts she liked. When she was sick, he always had an excuse to leave, saying work kept him busy. Thinking about it now, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It was so obvious how much he cared about Mia. And yet I only realized it now. Even if Brandon loved Mia deeply, he shouldn't have used me as a tool in his deception. The pain of discovering this truth cut deeper than the rejection I had faced from Adam. The dinner ended with me barely eating anything. On the way home, I finally spoke up. "You go ahead. I'm heading somewhere else." But Brandon responded gently yet firmly. "Wherever you're going, I'll come with you. I can't let you go alone." Seeing that I couldn't refuse him, I gave up trying. I didn't tell him the exact location and instead turned on the GPS for him to follow. The roads were quiet, and soon we were close to my destination. Just as I was about to direct him to turn, Brandon's phone rang. The moment he answered, his mother's worried voice came through. "Brandon, Mia's injury is infected. Can you take her to the hospital?" "I'll be right there," he said without hesitation, already preparing to turn the car around. Then he seemed to remember something and glanced at me with a conflicted expression. Before he could stammer out an excuse, I spoke up. "Just go. I'll walk from here." Without another word, I got out of the car. His concern for Mia won out in the end, and he quickly drove off. Watching his car disappear into the distance, I felt a bitter ache in my chest. If he had driven just a little further, he would have seen that my destination was the office where I would finalize the paperwork to cancel my household registration. A clear sign of my intent to leave. But he didn't notice because he didn't care. The process of canceling my registration was swift. Once it was done, I returned home. Not long after, Brandon also came back, looking apologetic. "Leah," he said softly, "you'll be marrying me soon. When that happens, Mia will be part of our family too. That's why I care about her. But it doesn't mean anything. You have to know that you're the only one in my heart." I couldn't understand how Brandon could lie so smoothly. My heart was exhausted, and I didn't have the energy to keep up this charade anymore. "I'm not feeling well. I'm going to rest," I said flatly. Brandon seemed startled by my coldness but didn't think too much of it. He probably assumed I was still upset about him leaving earlier to help Mia. In an attempt to make it up to me, he canceled all his work obligations and spent the following days taking me out on dates. We had candlelit dinners, strolled through upscale shopping districts, and even watched movies together. But when we arrived at the theater and sat down, I saw a group of people enter. In the middle of the crowd was Mia. Brandon's expression didn't change outwardly, but I could feel his attention shift. His gaze kept drifting toward her. I lost interest in the movie and suggested we leave early. Though he hesitated, his eyes lingering on Mia for a moment, he ultimately chose to leave with me. Just as we stepped out of the theater, a commotion erupted behind us. The theater had caught fire. When the shouts of the crowd became clear, Brandon's face changed. Without hesitation, he tried to push his way through the fleeing crowd, heading straight toward the burning theater. He hadn't made it far when the driver stopped him. "Mr. Brandon, the fire is too intense. You can't go in. The rescue team will be here any moment." But before the driver could finish, Brandon cut him off angrily. "Move aside," ignoring everyone's attempts to hold him back. He rushed into the flames with resolute determination. By the time the rescue team arrived, Brandon emerged, bloodied and exhausted, carrying Mia, unconscious, in his arms. He gently laid her on a stretcher, treating her like the most precious thing in the world. After confirming that she was okay, he finally collapsed, unconscious. As he fell, the severe burns on his back became visible. The sight so gruesome it brought tears to my eyes, not out of heartbreak, but because it dredged up memories I'd long tried to forget. Back then, Brandon had pursued me relentlessly for a long time, but I couldn't let go of Adam. I couldn't accept Brandon's feelings. Then one day, I suddenly collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. That's when I found out I had kidney failure. Desperate, I called my parents. begging them to come for compatibility testing. But they refused without hesitation, saying they were about to go on a trip with Mia. "It's not like kidney failure will kill you instantly," they said dismissively. "If it gets worse, let us know after you're gone." Then they heartlessly hung up. In my darkest moment, it was Brandon who quietly got tested, and Brandon who silently went into surgery. It wasn't until after the operation that I found out he had donated his kidney to me. I sat by his hospital bed, crying for what felt like forever. When he woke up and saw my swollen, tear-streaked face, he pulled me into his arms. "Don't cry. I did this willingly," he said softly. But those words only made me cry harder. In that moment, I thought maybe I should stop waiting for something that would never happen. Maybe I should turn to the person who was always by my side. I began to fall deeply in love with him, only to later discover it was all a lie. Thinking back now, Brandon had always been someone who could risk everything for love. But the person he had always been willing to sacrifice everything for was Mia. This time, Brandon's injuries were severe, and he was hospitalized for a long time. I avoided visiting him, even when his assistant told me repeatedly that Brandon wanted to see me. I ignored it all. One night, as I was sleeping, I suddenly felt a weight on me. Startled, I woke up to find Brandon lying beside me, still in his hospital gown. It was obvious he had snuck out of the hospital. He clung to me silently, and I had to struggle several times to push him off. "Why are you here?" I demanded. His voice was filled with sadness. "I missed you," he said softly, his tone tinged with vulnerability. "You haven't visited me at all these past few days. Is it because I ran back to save Mia?" "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you to help someone else. But she's your sister, and it was an emergency. Please, believe me when I say the only person I care about is you. Don't be angry with me anymore." His words were earnest and sincere. If I didn't know the truth about who he truly loved, I might have believed him. He had rushed back so desperately, yet I couldn't muster any trust or forgiveness. He didn't care about how I felt. What he truly feared was that I might see through his feelings for Mia, that our wedding would face obstacles, or that Mia's desires wouldn't be fulfilled. But he would soon have nothing to worry about. I would disappear entirely from their world and live with the happy family I had created for myself, even if that family was fake. It didn't matter. After all, the real world had never given me even a shred of love. What meaning was there in dwelling on what was real or fake? I wasn't angry, but to prevent him from doubting me, I added casually, "I've just been feeling under the weather lately, afraid I'd pass it on to you. That's why I haven't visited." Hearing that, Brandon immediately reached for his phone, probably to order medicine. I interrupted him. "I'm fine. You're the one who hasn't fully recovered yet. You should head back to the hospital." Though my words sounded concerned, my face betrayed no emotion. In truth, I looked as though I was urging him to leave. Brandon hesitated, feeling slightly uneasy, but dismissed his suspicions as overthinking. He obediently stood up to leave. Yet, when he saw me lying motionless on the bed without any intention of walking him out, he stopped in his tracks. With a hint of grievance, he muttered, "If you're not coming with me, I'm not leaving." We went back and forth like this until I sighed in resignation, got dressed, and followed him downstairs. During his stay at the hospital, he barely left my side, clinging to me incessantly. Everyone at the hospital admired what they thought was our love. But to me, it was nothing but a cruel irony. Only I knew the truth, that all of this was nothing more than an illusion. Few days later, Brandon was discharged from the hospital. However, the moment we got into the car, his phone rang. "Brandon, there's supposed to be a meteor shower tonight. Why don't you bring your fiancé along to hang out with us?" Someone on the other end suggested. Without hesitation, Brandon agreed. I didn't want to go but, afraid he might sense something was off, I reluctantly tagged along. Upon arriving at the gathering spot, I realized the attendees weren't just Brandon's friends. Mia was there too. The moment Brandon saw her, I noticed a flicker of happiness cross his face. Although he quickly masked his expression, I had already caught it. The way he concealed his concern for Mia so skillfully would have fooled anyone else. As night fell, a meteor streaked across the sky, followed by another, and then several more. The crowd gasped in awe before closing their eyes to make wishes. A street vendor pushing a small cart made his way through the crowd, calling out, "Wishing bottles. Write your wish down under the meteor shower, and I'll hang it on the wishing tree. It'll make your dreams come true." Even though I knew such a thing was absurd, Mia's enthusiasm was contagious, and everyone eagerly bought a bottle. When it was Brandon's turn, he didn't just buy one, he bought the entire stock. His friends couldn't help teasing him. "Brandon, what are you going to do with so many bottles? Write on all of them." "Exactly. You've already got everything you could want. Why do you need so many wishes? Isn't that a bit greedy?" Brandon just smiled faintly, ignoring their comments, as if lost in his own thoughts. Hearing those words, Brandon turned his head to look at me, his gaze soft and tender. "I can go without anything, but I hope Leah has everything." As soon as he finished speaking, one of his friends teased him. "Brandon, you're really a lovesick fool. Absolutely whipped." If anyone else were teased like that, they might have been embarrassed. But I said nothing, merely watching the cart full of wishing bottles. Then I quietly wrote my own wish. Brandon, curious, leaned closer to see, but I quickly hid the paper. "If you see it, it won't come true," I said lightly. Hearing this, he didn't press further. Instead, he reached out and patted my head. "Leah, your wish will definitely come true." I smiled faintly, saying nothing, but inwardly, I agreed with him. Yes, my wish would absolutely come true. Before sealing my wish inside the bottle, I opened the paper one last time to look at it. The words I had written were simple. "May Leah and Brandon never meet again." After Brandon finished writing wishes for the pile of bottles he had bought, the meteor shower was almost over. Just as we were about to leave, a startled cry rang out behind us. Turning back, I saw Mia sitting on the ground, her eyes red with tears. "I think I've twisted my ankle. It hurts so much," she said, her voice trembling with helplessness. Brandon immediately panicked. Without a second's hesitation, he rushed through the crowd and carried her on his back, heading down the mountain. I didn't stop him. I merely stood there silently, watching as everyone gathered around Mia, showering her with concern. Then, while they were occupied, I turned and climbed back up the mountain alone. I found the vendor who had helped us hang our wishing bottles earlier. Handing him a generous sum of money, I asked, "Can you take down the bottles we just hung?" Not long after, I sat down at a random spot, opening each bottle Brandon had written a wish for. One by one, I unfolded the notes. "I hope Mia is happy every year. I wish Mia a beautiful life. May Mia always be healthy and surrounded by good people. To the girl I love, Mia, may you live a life full of peace and happiness." All 99 bottles, every single wish, bore Mia's name. Not one of them mentioned me. My vision blurred with tears, but I quickly blinked them away. I left the bottles scattered on the ground, not caring what became of them, and began walking down the mountain. When I reached the bottom, I saw Brandon pacing anxiously. The moment he spotted me, he rushed over and wrapped me in a tight embrace. His voice trembled with fear. "Leah, where were you? After I came down the mountain, I couldn't find you anywhere. Thank God you're okay. Don't ever leave my sight again." His worry seemed so genuine that his friends couldn't resist teasing him. "Brandon, relax. There's only one path down the mountain. She couldn't have gone far. See? She's perfectly fine. You're so worked up. It's almost endearing how worried you get." Their words were clearly meant to reassure me, as if trying to convince me that Brandon truly cared. But I ignored them. My gaze went straight to Mia, whose ankle was now wrapped in a bandage. The way she smirked subtly, with a hint of triumph, told me everything. Her expression seemed to say, "You see, everyone says he loves you, but deep down, we both know the person he truly cares about is me." A deep sense of humiliation surged within me, but I forced it down. "It's fine. All of this will end soon." That day passed uneventfully, but not long after. It was Mia's birthday. My parents spared no expense, booking an entire yacht for the celebration and even inviting Brandon and me. They seemed to have completely forgotten that it was also my birthday. I was used to this. It had always been this way. When the invitation arrived, Brandon hesitated before agreeing. "It's your birthday too. Let's skip it this year." His reluctance to refuse was obvious. He wanted to go but was trying to maintain appearances in front of me. I played along. "It's fine. Let's go," I said lightly, relieved. He tried to suppress his happiness as he pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry we can't celebrate your birthday properly this year. I promise I'll make it up to you next year." I let out a quiet laugh. Next year? There won't be a next year. In just a few days, I would disappear from their world entirely. At the party, Mia wore a luxurious, custom-designed gown and stood in the center of the crowd, surrounded by admiration and praise. Even Adam, who had been overseas for business, had returned. He stood beside Mia, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. Together, they looked like the perfect couple. When it came time for the gift-giving, everyone presented their carefully prepared offerings. My parents and Adam, being the most important people in Mia's life, gave gifts that drew the most attention: extravagant jewelry and a limited edition luxury car. Then it was Brandon's turn. He pulled out a certificate. While everyone looked on in confusion, he opened it to reveal a design adorned with ruby accents. "Mia, you already have everything. After thinking long and hard, I decided this would suit you best. From today, you have the right to name this cloud." Gasps filled the room. The idea of naming a cloud was both extravagant and unheard of. "Even that can be bought? It seems Brandon truly went to great lengths," someone murmured. An admiration rippled through the crowd. Amid the noise, I quietly slipped out to the deck for some fresh air. The cool breeze was a relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. But before long, Mia followed me. Standing behind me, she looked at me with disdain and mockery. "Sister, what are you trying to do? Seems that not just Adam, but even Brandon has feelings for me." Her words were like a blade, yet I couldn't understand. From the time we were children, she had taken everything from me: my parents' love, my friends, even my relationships, including both Adam and now Brandon. Why couldn't she let me go? Why did she feel the need to flaunt it all in front of me? Frustrated, I finally asked, "Why? Why do you keep doing this to me?" Mia dropped her facade entirely and smirked. "Why? Because I enjoy seeing you suffer. It makes me happy. And soon, I'll get to see it all over again." Her words puzzled me, and I frowned. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, she grabbed my wrist and, with a sudden pull, dragged me over the edge of the yacht. Before I could react, we both plunged into the sea. Salt water flooded my nose and mouth, choking me. Instinctively, I wanted to cry for help, but the seawater rushed into my mouth, choking me and burning my throat. Fear of death consumed me as I struggled against the waves, my consciousness fading. Amid the chaos, I saw someone finally notice the commotion. Soon, I heard the sounds of multiple splashes. Adam, Brandon, and Trey had all jumped in. Without hesitation, all three of them swam toward Mia. From the yacht, I could faintly hear Mia's mother's panicked screams. "Save Mia! You must save Mia!" In that moment, despair engulfed me. The realization that everyone had abandoned me pierced deeper than the icy water. I closed my eyes, resigned to the thought of death. But then, the sound of someone swimming closer reached me, growing louder. It was as if someone was coming for me. Barely conscious, I opened my eyes. When I made out the face of the person nearing me, I was utterly stunned. It was Adam. Before I could process why he would save me, darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, I was in a hospital, blinking against the dryness in my eyes. I shifted my gaze from the stark white ceiling to the man sitting vigilantly by my bedside. After confirming multiple times that I wasn't dreaming, I struggled to believe it. The only person who had stayed by my side was Adam. Suppressing the shock swirling within me, I kept my tone calm and asked, "Why aren't you with Mia?" "I just checked on her before coming here. There are plenty of people with her. Brandon's there too," Adam replied. He seemed to expect that mentioning Brandon would provoke a strong reaction from me, but I remained expressionless. Without missing a beat, I dismissed him. "Then you should go back. I prefer being alone." Despite my words, Adam didn't move. I glanced at him, puzzled. "Is there something else?" "Don't marry Brandon," he said after a long pause, his voice unusually soft, as if choosing his words carefully. But once he started, the rest spilled out in a rush. He's only with you because he wants you to step aside for Mia. It was as though a burden he had carried for so long had finally been lifted. But when he looked at me, expecting a reaction, he found only calm indifference. My face betrayed no emotion, as though I had already known this all along. Adam stared at me, shocked. You already knew? I nodded slightly. Yes, I've known for a while. If you have nothing else to say, you can leave now. I kept my tone even, but my words were firm. Adam didn't leave. Instead, he grew visibly agitated. You know, and you're still planning to marry him? Are you crazy? I smiled faintly at his outburst. What does it matter to you? Didn't I already call off our engagement and hand you over to Mia, the woman you've always cared about? My words silenced him. Adam seemed unable to form a response. He didn't know why he felt so unsettled. He should have been happy. But lately, whenever he looked at Mia, memories of me would surface. Me following him around. Me always by his side. Even in his dreams. It was me he saw. Just as the silence stretched on, the hospital room door suddenly swung open. Brandon stormed in. And the moment he saw Adam, his expression darkened. Adam, what are you doing here? Brandon asked sharply. With Brandon there, the conversation could go no further. Adam cast me a lingering look before finally standing and leaving. But he hadn't gone far when Brandon turned his attention back to me. Brandon immediately wrapped his arms around me, his voice filled with worry. Leah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean not to save you. I just mistook someone else for you. Please don't be mad at me. From now on, I won't care about Mia anymore. But can you promise me not to see Adam again? You finally stopped liking him and agreed to be with me. If you start getting tangled up with him again, I might actually lose my mind. Hearing his continuous apologies, I stayed silent, my expression calm and unmoved. I closed my eyes, and only one thought remained in my mind. Let all of this end quickly. In the days that followed, perhaps to show his sincerity, Brandon stopped visiting Mia entirely and ignored any news about her. Instead, he stayed by my side, constantly buying gifts and trying to please me. This continued until the night before our wedding. That evening, I began packing my things. When Brandon noticed, he didn't think much of it and even offered to help. However, after some time, he realized that the items I was organizing were all related to him. Photos he had taken of me, hundreds of love letters he had written, and gifts he had given me during the time he pursued me. Then, he found a notebook. Opening it, he discovered it was filled with meticulous notes about my preferences and habits. Aliyah has a sensitive stomach and can't eat spicy food. Learn to cook 365 nutritious meals for her. Aliyah is afraid of thunder and often forgets to carry an umbrella. Always show up when it rains. Aliyah loves cherries. Plant an entire cherry orchard for her behind the house. Aliyah feels lonely, no matter what. Always be there whenever she looks back. The notebook was packed with notes, every page covered in his handwriting. Brandon read through it line by line, and by the end, he let out a soft laugh. Leah, pursuing you was so hard, but I'm glad I stuck with it. When I looked at his sincere eyes, I couldn't help but feel a moment of hesitation. He truly had done so much for me. If I hadn't heard with my own ears the words he said about Mia, I might have believed his affection was real. Yet, as he stood there, holding me tightly, I knew that his heart belonged elsewhere. Oblivious to my thoughts, he pulled me into his arms. Leah, I can't believe the day is finally here. Tomorrow, I'll marry you and take you home as my wife. Tell me, after today, you'll really be mine, right? I shook my head. No. From the moment he betrayed me, there was no future left for us. Just then, the butler entered the room, looking slightly hesitant. Before the wedding, it's tradition for the bride and groom not to see each other. Young master, you should go to the hotel now. Hearing this, Brandon remained where he was, holding me tightly. I want to stay with Leah, he insisted. The butler seemed uneasy, unsure how to proceed, and was about to say more when Brandon's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression froze. After a brief moment, he let go of me and stepped aside to answer the call. I couldn't hear what was being said on the other end, but when Brandon returned, his demeanor had changed. His embrace felt distant, almost mechanical, as he said, Leah, I'll see you tomorrow. I knew Brandon left not because of the butler's suggestion, but because of the phone call he had received. It was Mia calling him. Yet, I didn't say anything to stop him. I just silently watched his figure disappear behind the villa doors. After he left, I looked at the neatly packed suitcases. Everything was moved to the front yard of the villa. I had instructed the staff to prepare a fire pit in advance. Although they didn't know the reason, they didn't ask and simply did as I requested. Now, I threw each item from the boxes into the flames. Photos, notes, journals. When the last photo burned to ash, I looked at the smoldering remains and smiled faintly. Brandon, all our memories are gone, and so is our future. In the quiet of the night, unnoticed by anyone, the bride of tomorrow pulled her suitcase out of the villa. Without a backward glance, I stepped into a car. As the engine roared to life, I removed my SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it out the window. If no one loves me, I'll love myself. Goodbye, Beijing. Goodbye, everyone. There wasn't a direct flight to the remote island, so I had to first fly to the nearest country and then take a boat. By the time I arrived, it had been an entire day and night. The transfer of ownership had already been finalized. Stepping onto the island, I saw the villa I had designed waiting for me. Everything had been prepared exactly as I had envisioned. The interior was fully furnished, ready for me to move in. I had also purchased a yacht, knowing that getting on and off the island might be inconvenient in the future. Though I doubted I would ever leave, it was better to be prepared. Standing at the grand gates of the villa, I felt a rare sense of satisfaction. This was where I would live from now on. I took out my phone to contact the family I had custom ordered to ask when they would arrive. But before I could dial, the villa doors suddenly opened. A refined and handsome young man stepped out, looking at me with a hint of surprise before quickly recognizing who I was. Smiling, he stepped aside and invited me in. "Come in, please," he said warmly, then called out to the others inside. "Hey, the owner's here. We've been waiting for you all day," he added. 2 more people soon appeared. An older woman with a kind face and a dignified-looking man. The woman spoke first, introducing herself. "My name is Anna. I'll be the mother you requested. And this is Mr. Chi-jun, the father you requested," she said, gesturing to the man beside her. Before I could respond, the young man who had greeted me earlier spoke up with a bright smile. "Hello, I'm Lucas Tran, the boyfriend you ordered." Back in Beijing, the wedding between Brandon and me was held at the largest hotel in the city. The event had attracted immense attention, with most of the city's elites in attendance, eager to witness what was being hailed as the wedding of the century. As the ceremony was about to begin, a staff member rushed backstage, breathless, whispering something into Brandon's ear. The crowd couldn't hear what was said, but they saw his previously joyful expression freeze, then slowly darken. Brandon waved the staff member away and turned his back to the crowd, hiding his face from their gaze. The wedding was about to start, but the bride had yet to appear. Someone suggested, "Shouldn't you check with her side to see if something's wrong?" Brandon couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had been gnawing at him since the day before. His heart pounded like a drum as he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had memorized long ago, despite never saving it. The line rang for what felt like an eternity before the call was abruptly cut off. In that moment, Brandon felt his heart plummet, refusing to believe the worst. He stubbornly dialed again, but this time, the line went straight to a busy signal. Disbelief flickered across his face. Blocked? Could she have blocked me? Desperate, he switched to calling the villa directly. After several rings, someone finally picked up. Brandon didn't wait for pleasantries. "Where's Leah? Have you seen her? Did she forget what time the ceremony starts? Hurry up and remind her. The wedding is about to begin." His voice grew increasingly uncertain with each word. Leah had never been someone to lose track of time. And now, with her blocking his number, dread crept deeper into his mind. The other end of the line erupted into chaos as staff scrambled to search for me. Moments later, a trembling voice came through. "Sir, we couldn't find Miss Leah anywhere in the villa. But we did find the wedding dress. It's been burned in the garden." As the words hit him, Brandon felt as though his mind had gone completely blank. A ringing sound echoed in his head. drowning out everything else. Without a second thought, he bolted onto the stage, his eyes scanning the crowd frantically. When he noticed Adam wasn't present either, the tension inside him snapped. The only thought left in his mind was that I had run away. Ignoring the murmurs and gasps from the guests, Brandon dashed out of the banquet hall, leaving chaos in his wake. His abrupt exit stunned everyone, and whispers quickly spread through the room. Meanwhile, Adam picked up Brandon's call almost immediately. "Brandon." Adam's voice sounded confused, his breathing steady. Brandon's reply, however, came in a near collapse. "Where are you? The bride didn't show up, and I left the ceremony. Everything is falling apart." Back at the banquet, the wedding everyone had anticipated so eagerly descended into pandemonium. Guests whispered among themselves while the Robert family scrambled to salvage the situation. In the end, it was Mia's parents who stepped forward to calm the crowd, sending guests away and apologizing profusely. Once the hall had emptied, they finally pieced together what had happened. Upon learning that I had fled, their expressions darkened. "That troublemaker," Mr. Robert muttered coldly, his face shadowed with anger. "She ruined the wedding and humiliated the Robert family." Mrs. Robert, however, was lost in thought. She turned to Mia, who still stood nearby, her face blank with confusion. A sudden sense of unease rose in her chest. "Leah and Brandon were doing fine together," she said hesitantly, as if trying to convince herself. Why would she run away like this, so suddenly? Today, Adam also didn't show up. Mrs. Roberts' casual remark, could she have regretted stepping aside for Mia and gone to bother Adam again? Was merely a passing thought. But once spoken aloud, the idea gained traction, and the more everyone thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. Their expressions changed, and they hurried to the Smith family home. It seemed that people's ability to unite came at the most inconvenient moments. Those aware of the situation all assumed I had run away to find Adam. Fortunately, Adam wasn't at home, preventing a chaotic scene at the Smith estate. Adam himself had no idea what was happening. All he felt that day was a heavy sadness, knowing I was about to marry someone else. The weight grew heavier with the knowledge that I was aware of Brandon's true intentions in approaching me. Yet I still chose to marry him. Frustrated and unable to bear the thought, Adam headed to a private club owned by his family. In the dim light of a private room, he ordered a table full of drinks and started drinking alone. He didn't want to attend my wedding, didn't want to see me in a wedding dress walking toward someone else, saying, "I do." Amid his drunken haze, his phone suddenly rang. It was Brandon. Adam, still dazed, was confused as to why the groom, who should have been at his wedding, was calling him. He absent-mindedly gave Brandon his location before he could think to ask why he was calling. Before he could utter another word, the line went dead. The abruptness left Adam wondering if the entire exchange had been an alcohol-induced hallucination. He downed another glass of liquor, each sip fueling his growing urge to call off his engagement with Mia. His mind was a whirl of conflicting thoughts as he stared at his phone. A voice in his head urged him to call the Robert family and end it once and for all. Just as he lifted the phone to make the call, the door to the private room burst open with a loud crash. Blinding light from the hallway flooded the dim room, revealing the mess of scattered bottles, and Adam slouched on the sofa, phone in hand. For a moment, Brandon thought he had come to the wrong place. Frowning, Brandon flipped on all the lights in the room. The sudden brightness made Adam wince and raise his hand to shield his eyes. Before he could fully register what was happening, Brandon stormed over in 2 quick strides. "Did Leah come to see you?" Brandon demanded, his voice sharp and urgent. Hearing my name snapped Adam out of his haze. His senses sharpened as he took in Brandon's furious expression, and a smirk tugged at his lips. "Leah? Isn't she supposed to be at her wedding with you? Why aren't you at your ceremony? Why are you here looking for me?" Adam's words seemed to hit Brandon like a blow. His eyes widened as he fully processed their meaning. Suddenly, Adam stood up, his drunkenness fading in the wake of Brandon's reaction. "What do you mean?" he asked, his face turning serious. Seeing Adam's genuine confusion, the anger on Brandon's face drained away, replaced by bewilderment and fear. Meanwhile, I, despite having grown up in Beijing, had always been lonely and introverted, with no close friends. Knowing my personality, It was clear to Brandon that I wouldn't seek out Adam, and given the Robert family's strict nature, they would never help me escape. Brandon's voice dropped, tinged with frustration and despair. Leah's gone. She disappeared. She burned the wedding dress and our rings. I don't know where she's gone. Brandon collapsed onto the sofa, his eyes staring blankly ahead, losing all focus. Adam, upon hearing Brandon's words, was momentarily stunned, unable to believe it. Despite having told me that Brandon didn't truly care about me, Adam had never expected me to actually leave. But as he recalled our conversations, a spark of realization lit up in his mind. It wasn't that she didn't care about Brandon, she had already planned to leave. Yet, even after leaving, I hadn't sought him out. Where could she possibly have gone? Adam was lost in his thoughts, unaware that his silence had caught Brandon's attention. It wasn't until Brandon suddenly grabbed his collar and brought their faces close that Adam noticed the dangerous glint in his eyes. Do you know where she is? Brandon's voice was icy, sharp enough to cut through the tension. In an instant, Adam sobered up. A mocking smile spread across his face, one filled with malice. I don't know where she is, he said slowly, but I know why she ran away. Brandon froze, his grip loosening slightly as he instinctively asked, why? His voice trembled, betraying the fact that he was entirely clueless about my thoughts. Until now, he had assumed I left to find Adam, but this revelation threw him into turmoil. Jealousy and confusion churned inside him. How could Adam know something about me that he didn't? Adam's reply, however, was a direct blow to Brandon's composure. Do you remember the day she woke up after falling into the sea? Adam's tone was calm, almost taunting. Think about it. What do you think we talked about during the time we spent alone? Brandon's heart pounded in his chest, unease gnawing at him. He wanted to turn and leave, to escape whatever answer was coming, but his legs felt like they were moving through quicksand. Each step was slow and uncertain. Adam, noticing Brandon's attempt to flee, didn't hold back. He delivered his words like a knife to the heart. I told her everything, Adam said coldly. I told her you didn't approach her out of love, but because you had an ulterior motive. I told her the person you really cared about was Mia, and that marrying her was just a way to get her to step aside for Mia. Adam paused briefly, watching Brandon's steps falter. Then, with a cruel edge in his voice, he added, do you want to guess how she reacted after hearing that? Adam wasn't looking for a response. Instead, he continued, answering his own question with a hint of mockery. She wasn't surprised. Not even a little. She wasn't hurt. And she didn't doubt my words. Because, Brandon, she already knew. She knew it all along. Brandon's breathing hitched, and his movements became more frantic, almost as though he were trying to outrun Adam's words. I used to think she was so in love with you that she didn't care if you didn't love her back. That even knowing your motives, she'd still stay by your side. Adam admitted, his voice tinged with bitterness. I was jealous of you back then, but now I realize I was wrong. She didn't stay because she didn't care. She stayed to destroy you in the end. Adam's final words landed like a thunderclap, but by the time he finished speaking, Brandon's figure had disappeared entirely from the room. It was as if he hadn't heard Adam's parting words at all, or perhaps he had chosen not to. He slowly walked to the doorway and watched as Brandon hurried down the stairs, his disheveled figure retreating like a man running away. That pitiful sight made everything crystal clear to Adam. For a moment, he felt an odd sense of satisfaction. Why should I be the only one to suffer? He thought. Turned out that even Brandon, the man who had seemed so composed, was no different from him. And compared to Brandon's actions, Adam felt that at least his own were less despicable. Adam turned back to the messy room, called someone to clean up, and then left the club without a backward glance. The chilly night wind brushed against his face as he exhaled deeply. Looking at the number he had prepared to call before Brandon arrived, he hesitated for a moment, then turned off the screen and flagged down a car. The chaos surrounding my disappearance had undoubtedly escalated. If Adam's guess was correct, the Robert family and Mia were likely at his family home right now. They were no different from Brandon in their assumptions about me. 15 minutes later, Adam pushed open the doors to his family home. Just as he expected, the Robert family was seated neatly on the sofa in the Smith family living room. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. See, I wasn't wrong. At the sound of the door opening, all three members of the Robert family turned their eyes toward him. When they saw he had returned alone, they glanced past him with visible disappointment, clearly searching for any sign of me. She didn't come to find me, Adam said with a shrug. His words were met with disbelief. Mr. and Mrs. Robert frowned, their expressions filled with disapproval. If she didn't come to find you, who else could she have gone to? With her personality, she doesn't have a single friend in all of Beijing, Mr. Robert snapped. She's nothing but trouble, Mrs. Robert added, her tone sharp and laced with disdain. Her bitter expression made it clear that in her eyes, I was nothing more than a disgrace. If an outsider had witnessed the scene, they would never have guessed she was talking about her own daughter. It was as if I were her mortal enemy, rather than her child. With that timid, cowardly nature of hers, what else could she possibly do besides fight over things with Mia? She continued venomously. Adam remained silent as Mia leaned gently against her mother's side, her gaze fixed on him. Her lips curled into a faint smile, but the emotion never reached her eyes. She knew she had to act, or else Adam's heart might truly waver. Adam, Mia said softly, her voice tinged with concern. Marriage isn't a game. Leah agreed to marry Brandon, so how could she act so immaturely on their wedding day? If you know where she is, please tell us. We can't let her continue to cause trouble like this. The sight of the three of them united in their anger and contempt left Adam momentarily stunned. Were these really my family? How could they all be so indifferent to my safety? Not a single word of worry about my well-being. Only endless accusations and complaints. The realization hit him hard, and for a moment, he found it laughable. How had he not noticed before? For over 25 years, I had grown up in such an environment. How much resentment and frustration must have built up over that time? He couldn't say. But at this moment, he decided he wouldn't continue enabling them. Mr. and Mrs. Robert, Adam began, his voice steady. I really don't know where Leah is right now, but there's something else I want to discuss with you. The room fell silent as the Robert family turned their attention to him. Adam cleared his throat and calmly spoke the words he had prepared. Mr. and Mrs. Robert, I want to call off my engagement to Mia. The statement stunned everyone in the room. The air seemed to freeze as their expressions shifted from shock to disbelief. No one expected that Adam, who once desperately wanted to break off our engagement to marry Mia, would suddenly propose calling off his engagement to her instead. After a brief moment of shock, Mia's eyes reddened, her expression filled with confusion. She couldn't understand why he had gone out for just a short while and returned saying such things. Instinctively, she shifted the blame onto me, though I was nowhere to be found. Adam, she asked tearfully, did my sister say something to you? Before she could finish, Adam cut her off with a frown and a look of clear frustration. If I remember correctly, I just said Leah didn't come to find me. Besides, even if she did, what could she possibly say to me? Mia's helpless expression and teary eyes, contrasted against Adam's firm stance, created a stark divide. Seeing their precious daughter being wronged, the Robert parents were quick to jump to her defense, rushing over to comfort her. Meanwhile, Adam's parents, who had been silently observing the drama, finally stepped in, attempting to defuse the situation. Adam, what nonsense are you talking about? Mrs. Smith scolded. Marriage isn't a game. How can you talk about breaking off the engagement so casually? Apologize to Mia and her parents right now. Look at what you've done. You've scared the poor girl. With Mrs. Smith's intervention, the Robert parents' anger eased slightly, but their discontent remained evident. Remembering Adam's earlier declaration, they couldn't help but sneer. Leah is such a despicable person, Mrs. Robert remarked, her tone dripping with disdain. What good could possibly come out of her mouth? All she does is stir up trouble and try to take things from Mia. She's not even remotely dignified. Their complaints continued, their voices relentless. But instead of evoking sympathy, their words only filled Adam with a bitter sense of irony. It was no wonder I chose to leave. With parents like them, a sister like Mia, and a fiancé like Brandon, who wouldn't want to run far, far away. Perhaps this was for the best. Letting me escape their suffocating world was the only way I could truly shine. 5 years later, after 5 years of living in solitude on the island, I finally opened its gates to the outside world. Of course, it was no longer referred to as a deserted island. After a long search, I had given it a name, Reunion, meaning a joyful encounter. Life is full of unpredictable meetings and partings, and I hoped that anyone who came here would find joy in their time here. I had left behind my painful past and found the right people and purpose in this new place. The name seemed perfectly fitting. The scenery on Reunion was breathtaking, which eventually caught the attention of a director from a nearby tourism agency. After months of negotiation, I agreed to let them film on the island. However, I set clear conditions: they could come, but they couldn't damage the island's environment or film my house without permission. The first condition was accepted without hesitation. However, the second requirement proved more challenging, as the director's entertainment program relied on live broadcasts followed by edited versions. This meant there would inevitably be moments they couldn't fully control. After lengthy discussions, both sides compromised. For the live broadcast, the crew promised to avoid filming the four of us, and if we inadvertently appeared in any footage, the director would ensure that the scenes were blurred out immediately during live broadcasts and removed entirely in edited versions. I didn't dwell on this issue further. A month after the contract was signed, the director brought the show's guests to the island. Since everyone had been briefed about my background beforehand, no one dared to overstep in my presence. Most of them tried to avoid direct encounters with me. However, living together on Reunion meant occasional appearances on camera were unavoidable. Thankfully, the director stayed true to his word. Whenever we appeared on screen, the footage was blurred promptly, so I stopped worrying about it. That was until the entertainment program went viral. A blurry screenshot from the live broadcast began circulating online. Brandon, who typically had no interest in the entertainment industry, stumbled upon the image. For 5 years, he had used every possible resource to search for me, but he had found nothing. He couldn't even track down where I had last been seen. His meticulous investigation had revealed that my identity had been completely erased just 2 weeks before the wedding. This meant that I had been planning my departure for at least half a month, and he hadn't suspected a thing. The realization filled him with regret and dread. I had been carefully plotting my escape while he remained oblivious, sharing a bed with me every night, utterly unaware. Only then did Brandon understand that his feelings for Mia had long since eroded under the weight of her constant demands and his one-sided sacrifices. Just as my feelings for Adam had disintegrated over time, true love required mutual effort, and Brandon finally grasped how futile his sacrifices for Mia had been. After years of exhausting himself for her happiness, he had turned to me, pretending to love me as if I were his entire world. And yet, it had been me who stayed by his side every day, who shared his burdens and supported him through illness. No matter how much Brandon didn't want to admit it, he had fallen in love with me long ago. But his obsession with chasing Mia had blinded him to his own heart. Now, he wanted to find me and tell me that his feelings for me were genuine. But 5 years of failure had shattered his confidence into countless pieces. Even Adam, who later willingly left his family and broke off his engagement with Mia, began mocking Brandon. Adam laughed at his delusional hopes and inability to accept reality. Brandon had once asked Adam why he was so determined to end his engagement. Adam had replied, "Back then, I didn't understand my own heart and made a terrible mistake. Now that I see clearly, I won't repeat that mistake again." But if mistakes were to be counted, Brandon's were even greater than Adam's. The difference was that Adam chose to let go, while Brandon was determined to reclaim what he had lost. That viral image became a sensation online. It all started with a sharp-eyed viewer of the entertainment program. The image of Lucas Tran's blurred-out face during a live broadcast caught their attention. Despite the blurring, the viewer quickly captured a screenshot and posted it online. However, the network's blur tool couldn't keep up with the speed and sharpness of the internet-savvy audience's eyes and reflexes. The moment the image hit the web, speculation exploded. A viral post with a single blurry image spread across the internet. "This man is so handsome. In 3 minutes. I want to know everything about him." The post quickly gained traction, attracting a flood of comments agreeing and sparking widespread discussions. Normally, Brandon wouldn't pay any attention to entertainment news. But after 5 years of relentless searching for me, He had tried every avenue possible. It was only natural that he wouldn't overlook the broad reach of social media. That's how the image eventually found its way to him. First, he didn't think much of it. It was just a picture of some man. But for reasons he couldn't explain, he found himself taking a second look. That second glance changed everything. When he zoomed in on the blurred section of the photo, he noticed the faint outline of a woman tending to some flowers. Though the image was too unclear to make out her features, something about it struck him. He felt certain it was me. To confirm his suspicions, Brandon contacted the production team responsible for the show, eventually obtaining the director's contact information. For the director, receiving a friend request from a high-profile CEO of a billion-dollar corporation was an unexpected surprise. He initially assumed it might be a sponsorship opportunity for his show, and eagerly accepted the request. Before he could craft a proper greeting, a message from Brandon arrived. Where was this filmed? Attached to the message was the viral photo. The director immediately recognized Brandon's true intent. He wasn't here for sponsorship but to gather information about the island owner. Faced with this realization, the director hesitated. If he told the truth, he might establish a good relationship with such a powerful individual. However, revealing details about a private island without the owner's consent risked their entire production team being banned from the island. Especially since I was already displeased about the photo going public. After weighing the pros and cons, the director gritted his teeth and refused Brandon's inquiry. I'm sorry, but we have an agreement with the island's owner. I can't disclose any personal information. Though the rejection stung, Brandon didn't press further. He set his phone down and began to consider his next move. Despite the lack of confirmation, the director's nervousness only strengthened his belief. The woman in the image was undoubtedly me. Meanwhile, Adam came to the same conclusion but acted far more decisively. Before the entertainment show even premiered, it had been mentioned that the filming location was a private island. Using that information and piecing together footage from the show, he quickly narrowed down the possibilities. He traveled directly to North America, photo in hand, seeking out those who dealt in private island transactions. It didn't take long for him to pinpoint the island where I lived. Taking a boat to the island's shore, he waited silently aboard, never stepping onto the island itself. First, I didn't think much of it. Supply deliveries had been scheduled for the past few days, so when I saw a yacht approaching, I assumed it was carrying provisions. Without hesitation, I grabbed Lucas and headed to the shore to greet it. However, when we arrived, there were no supplies, only Adam, standing silently on the deck of the boat. "Leah," he said. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. It was soft and gentle, yet carried an undercurrent of complexity I couldn't quite decipher. I didn't turn back, but I also didn't leave. I simply stood there in silence, waiting for Adam to say what he had come to say. It had been so long since we'd had a proper conversation. Adam, unfazed by my indifferent attitude, seemed content just to see me again. But if he could find his way here, then it was only a matter of time before Brandon showed up too. Clearing his throat, Adam spoke in a careful tone. "I came here to tell you two things," he began. "First, Mia and I have called off our engagement. Second, Brandon might also come looking for you. If he does, will you consider going back home?" His words confused me, prompting me to turn and look at him. "What does your broken engagement with Mia have to do with me?" I asked flatly. Adam opened his mouth to explain, but I had already turned away, uninterested in his answer. As for the word home, it only brought a bitter smile to my lips. This island was my home. Where else could I possibly return to? As for Brandon, so long as he stayed off this island, it didn't matter to me where he went or what he did. I reached out to take Lucas Tran's hand, gripping it tightly as we walked back toward the island. Adam recognized Lucas instantly, the same man who had caused a storm online. Seeing the natural way our hands fit together brought a pang of sourness to his chest. So, I had truly moved on during these 5 years. I no longer needed any of them. But as he thought about it more, Adam let out a bitter chuckle. Had she ever needed us? Or rather, when she did, none of us were ever there for her. The island's layout wasn't complicated. From his vantage point on the boat, Adam could see the film crew working in the distance, carefully avoiding the direction of the villa. It was clear that the crew had made a deliberate effort to respect the boundaries I had set. The viral photo was clearly an accident, not a calculated move. He turned back to watch me as I walked away, the villa's grand gates opening to reveal a middle-aged couple stepping out. Their kind smiles and gentle demeanor only enhanced the harmonious image of what appeared to be a real family. Standing together, the four of us looked like a perfect portrait of familial happiness. "Leah, I wish you happiness," Adam murmured softly before turning to signal the boat's departure. The engine roared to life, and slowly, the vessel pulled away from the island, disappearing into the endless horizon. The entertainment program's filming had reached its final day. After today, Reunion Island would return to its usual peaceful state. Not only was I relieved, but so were Anna and David Tran. Though they didn't oppose interacting with others, they still disliked appearing on camera. Ever since Lucas had accidentally been caught on film and edited into the program, their wariness had only grown. Thankfully, the crew had been respectful, choosing to film only on the far side of the island. Even so, knowing the crew would soon leave brought a sense of relief to all of us. I let out a long breath, vowing never to allow such disruptions again. "Leah, come inside. Lunch is ready," Anna called, her warm voice breaking my thoughts. She stood in the doorway, wearing an apron and smiling gently. David followed closely behind her, his demeanor honest and grounded. "Anna made sweet and sour ribs today. Your favorite. Come quickly and try them before they get cold. It won't taste as good then." After 5 years of living together, our interactions had become completely natural. Anna and David, who had always wanted children but couldn't have any, treated me as if I were their own daughter. Originally, they had become my parents at my request, but over time, their care for me deepened. To them, I wasn't just fulfilling a role. I was their real, obedient, thoughtful, and cherished child. Clearly, this was a family I had hired with money, yet I treated them with genuine respect. I had heard that they were orphans, with no parents of their own. That shared circumstance made them feel as though we were destined to be a family. Coincidentally, they had no children, and coincidentally, I had no parents. The meal passed joyfully. Lucas sat beside me, attentively picking out food for me, peeling shrimp with care. The island was rich in seafood, but I never found it particularly appealing. It wasn't until later that Lucas discovered I simply didn't enjoy raw or unprocessed seafood. From then on, he naturally took on the task of preparing it properly. After a satisfying meal, I walked to the other side of the island to check on the entertainment show being filmed. Since it was the last day, the crew took it easy on the guests. A group of men and women laughed and chatted loudly, filling the area with lively energy. As I stood there, observing the cheerful scene, I couldn't help but reflect. In the past 5 years, apart from supply deliveries, no outsiders had set foot on this island. Being a private island, no one could come here without my explicit permission. It had been a long time since I had experienced this level of liveliness. While I was lost in thought, Lucas approached with a plate of fruit. Noticing my distant gaze toward the lively group, he handed the plate to me before casually sitting down on the ground beside me. I didn't take the plate, unwilling to hold it without a table to place it on. Instead, I gave him a subtle look, signaling my refusal. Understanding immediately, Lucas smiled, picked up a small piece of fruit with a toothpick, and brought it to my lips. Only then did I eat, feeling satisfied. In the past, I lacked the privilege to act on whims. I was accustomed to prioritizing others over myself. But here, I was the center of everyone's attention, the one who could afford to be a little demanding. The sincerity of Anna, David, and Lucas made me gradually let my guard down, allowing myself to embrace this ease. And honestly, I felt it was just fine this way. Brandon finally arrived on the island, but he didn't come alone. Accompanying him were Mia and her parents. The Robert family hadn't been doing well in recent years. Adam had left to build his own business, And his first act of success was to directly compete with the Robert family, taking over part of their market share. Initially, the Robert parents had planned to use marriage as a way to solidify their status. But Mia, spoiled by their overindulgence, had become difficult to manage. After Adam broke off their engagement, she caused constant disruptions at home. They couldn't bear to marry off their youngest daughter, while their eldest, me, had faced 2 failed engagements, vanished without a trace, and even erased my identity. They had no idea where I had gone or how to find me. It wasn't until Brandon claimed to have discovered my whereabouts that they finally learned of my existence. Secretly, the Robert parents decided that when they saw me, they would teach their ungrateful daughter a lesson. They had also heard I had purchased an island and was living a life of luxury instead of supporting my parents. By the time they caught sight of the elegant and secluded villa on the island, their faces were already filled with anger. Any thoughts of reconciliation, as Brandon had suggested, were completely forgotten. Not that there was much to reconcile. There had never been any misunderstandings between us. When I had seen Adam, I had already guessed that Brandon would eventually find his way here too. I'd even considered whether I should leave to avoid them, but then I thought, why should I? They were insignificant to me now. There was no reason to run. Even though they were unrelated to me, it wasn't as if I was afraid to face them. I simply didn't expect Brandon to bring the Robert parents along. Back in Beijing, I had always been an outsider. My parents didn't like me. My younger sister despised me. The man I loved liked my sister. And the one who claimed to love me ultimately loved her too. My departure should have been exactly what they wanted. So why did they go through this charade of desperately searching for me? Was it because the act of keeping up appearances mattered that much to them? Was it so important that even after I, a mere supporting character, had exited the stage, I still had to be dragged back to finish their play? But those were fleeting thoughts. There was no point in dwelling on it. They were no longer part of my life. Whatever they wanted to do now had nothing to do with me. Brandon and the Robert family arrived at Reunion Island quicker than I anticipated. That morning, we were having breakfast when there was a sudden, forceful pounding on the door, only for it to stop abruptly. Moments later, it was replaced by a more polite knock. I furrowed my brow just as Lucas rose to open the door. The moment he came face to face with those outside, everyone froze. Brandon seemed to regret bringing the Robert parents here, especially after hearing their aggressive knocking. He hadn't been sure whether he should bring them at all. But now, as his eyes took in Lucas, standing inside my house, the flames of jealousy immediately consumed him. His chest heaved, signaling the storm brewing within. Had he not yet seen me, I feared he might have lashed out right then and there. Who is it? My voice floated out from within, drawing his attention instantly. Brandon didn't want to think about who this man was. Hearing my voice, he instinctively craned his neck to peer inside, hoping to catch a glimpse of me. But as soon as I spoke, the Robert parents couldn't hold back any longer. Abandoning all pretense of decorum, they began shouting, "You ungrateful child," my mother scolded. "Running away from home like that. It's been 5 years, and you haven't come home once. Do you even consider us your parents anymore? How much shame are you planning to bring to our family? Get out here and come home with us." Brandon barely had time to intervene before Mia chimed in, her voice dripping with sweetness, yet laced with venom. "Sis, I know you're mad at me, but no matter how angry you are, you can't ignore Mom and Dad. They've been worried sick looking for you these past few years. Please come home with us." Listening to these people, who so easily claimed to be my family, spew nonsense the moment they arrived, even Lucas, normally composed, couldn't suppress a cold laugh. "Where did these stray dogs come from?" he asked, his tone mocking, barking madly as soon as they see people. Then, he shifted his stance to completely block Brandon's view of the house, his expression sharp as ice. Before they could explode in anger, he added, "This is Leah's island. Coming here without permission is trespassing. And this isn't some safe little mainland. Better be careful, or you might end up as shark food." The chilling look in his eyes made all 4 of them flinch momentarily, though their shock was quickly replaced by fury. "Who do you think you are?" Mia snapped, her voice shrill. Brandon, his face red with anger, stepped forward, ready to retort. But before he could get a word out, the door slammed shut in their faces with a resounding bang. He lunged forward as if to stop it, but the only thing waiting for him was dust. None of them had anticipated being turned away so decisively, not even catching a glimpse of me before being shut out. Inside, I remained calm, watching the scene unfold from a distance. Lucas's actions made me feel at ease, and the absurdity of their entitled behavior didn't faze me. The Robert family and Mia Robert had no intention of lowering their voices. Even from a distance, I could catch bits and pieces of their conversation. So, when Lucas came over and mentioned that a group of people outside claimed to be my relatives, calling them scammers, I wasn't surprised at all. Instead, I calmly corrected him. They're not scammers. My words drew curious glances from everyone in the dining area. It wasn't long ago that I had introduced myself to others here as single, and now this sudden revelation clearly puzzled them. Before I could offer any explanation, there was another loud banging on the door, quickly followed by a gentler knock. Lucas frowned and was about to send them away again, but I shook my head and stood up. I decided to handle this myself. No matter what they wanted, it was time to address it directly. Of course, the most suitable person to face them was me. As I walked toward the door, the loud knocking and hostile voices grew closer. Behind me, Lucas and the Tans hurried to follow, worried about me facing them alone. By the time they caught up, I had already opened the door. Whether it was an accidental leftover force from their knocking or an intentional move, as soon as the door swung open, a slap came flying toward me. Lucas's heart sank, fearing I would be hurt, but I had anticipated it. In the split second before the slap landed, I shifted to the side. A dull thud echoed as Mr. Robert stumbled forward and fell to the ground. His face flushed red with humiliation in front of the gathered crowd, and by the time he clumsily got back to his feet, his expression was livid. His chest heaved with each ragged breath, on the verge of collapsing from sheer anger. Mia quickly rushed forward to help him up, her tone dripping with reproach. "Sis, how could you do that to Dad? He's an elder. If you're angry, take it out on me, not him. He's old. What if something happened to him? Could you take responsibility?" Mrs. Roberts' worried expression softened slightly after seeing Mia help her husband up, but it didn't take long for her anger to flare again. Her eyes burned with fury as she turned to me. "Leah, you ungrateful brat. Why did I ever give birth to someone as heartless as you? First, you stole me as fiancé, and now you lay hands on your father? You'll never be half the daughter Mia is." With her anger boiling over, she lunged forward, raising her hand to slap me, but before her hand could connect, Lucas stepped in, blocking her. He pushed her back with enough force to make her stagger. If not for Brandon's quick reflexes, catching her just in time, she might have fallen flat on her face. This humiliating scene only infuriated them further. Their shouting escalated, not just directed at me but at Lucas and the Tans as well. They were loud, indignant, and relentless, accusing us of being rude and demanding we all be thrown off the island. I ignored their insults and turned my gaze toward Brandon, who had remained mostly silent, standing behind them. His expression was unreadable, but the moment our eyes met, I noticed something unexpected. There was no joy, no relief, no trace of excitement. Instead, his eyes were filled with apathy and disdain. It wasn't the look of someone reuniting with a long-lost love. It was the gaze of a stranger looking at someone insignificant. For Brandon, this was a moment of suppressed frustration. He had gone through so much trouble to bring the Robert family here, yet I greeted them with indifference and cold detachment. He felt an unexplainable bitterness swelling within him. First, he thought that if I were to meet the Robert couple and Mia Robert after so many years apart, we could perhaps reminisce about the past. He knew our relationship hadn't been particularly close before, but they were still family. After all, there's no grudge that lasts overnight between parents and children. As long as we sat down and talked things through, everything could be resolved. At least that's what he believed. On the way here, Brandon had even given specific instructions, telling them not to be so confrontational. If there's anything to discuss, sit down and talk it out properly, he'd said. The Robert couple and Mia had agreed very clearly at the time. He couldn't understand why they caused such a scene upon arrival. Deep down, Brandon knew part of this mess was his fault. That's why he tried to suppress the bitterness rising in his heart, carefully organizing his words before speaking. Leah, it's been a long time, he began, his voice subdued. I've missed you. For the past 5 years. He had thought endlessly about meeting me again, but countless times, his efforts had ended in failure, making him believe that he might never see me for the rest of his life. Now, seeing me here in front of him, countless words swirled in his mind, but he didn't know where to start. He wanted to revisit old memories, to say something meaningful, but I, the person he had longed for day and night, showed no interest at all. You brought them here to cause trouble for me, didn't you, Brandon? My tone was calm, but the weight of my words pierced him. Other than running away, have I wronged you in any way? You didn't love me. You only pretended to, wanted to marry me, so I wouldn't stand in the way of Mia, Robert, and Adam. I took a step closer, my voice sharpening as I continued. I didn't hold it against you for deceiving me, for using my feelings just to make Mia happy. Isn't it enough that I left? Can't you erase it all and let me live in peace? Why do you have to keep appearing in front of me? I stopped speaking and turned my gaze to the Robert family, Mia and her parents, whose angry stares bore into me. You call me ungrateful, I said, my voice tinged with quiet resentment. But have you ever fulfilled your responsibilities as parents? Have you ever treated me as your daughter for even a single day? You accuse me of stealing from Mia? How ridiculous. Everything she wanted, I gave up for her. The better room in the house, higher rankings in school, even your so-called love, my friends, my relationships, all of it, I gave to her. Isn't this exactly what you wanted? From now on, just be her parents. Let her have Adam, Brandon, or whoever else she desires. What more could you possibly want from me? As my voice grew more intense, my emotions began to stir. Those words, spoken aloud, carried the weight of everything I had bottled up for over 25 years. My chest heaved as I finished speaking, and the room fell into complete silence. Lucas, who had suspected that my past held its share of pain, watched intently, though I never shared these memories. He respected my boundaries and pretended not to notice. He had never asked, never pried into the secrets I chose to keep hidden. But now, hearing my words, the truth that everyone had unconsciously avoided was finally laid bare. And it was more devastating than anyone could have imagined. He stepped forward and gently held my hand, the warmth of his touch driving away the cold that lingered in my palm. At the same time, Mr. and Mrs. Tanner stepped closer, shielding me protectively, though they had recently learned that I had biological parents, which had once made them question the origins of our relationship. They had treated me as their own daughter for the past 5 years. Now, after hearing about all that I had endured, their eyes were filled with nothing but sympathy. Feeling the genuine concern surrounding me, I couldn't stop my eyes from reddening. I tightened my grip on their hands, drawing strength from them. Only then did the group with Brandon seem to understand the dynamics of the relationship I shared with the Tanners and Lucas. It was clear we weren't merely bound by financial ties. The accusations I had hurled at them still echoed in the air. Seeing how I leaned on my chosen family now, the Robert couple appeared startled, a deep unease creeping into their expressions. Subconsciously, they turned to me, asking hesitantly, "What are you saying?" Their voices brought my attention back to them. Glancing at their disheveled appearances, I couldn't help but laugh. Spreading my hands, I gestured to the people beside me and introduced them calmly. "He is my husband, recognized and protected by law. They are my parents, also legally recognized. And as for all of you," I paused, my gaze steady. "Since 5 years ago, there has been no relationship between us whatsoever." My words left them stunned. They froze in place, unable to process what they had just heard. Brandon, in particular, seemed completely dumbfounded. Without thinking, he released his hold on Mrs. Robert and stumbled forward, reaching out in an attempt to grab my hand. Before he could, Lucas intervened, slapping Brandon's hand away with a sharp, deliberate motion. His brows furrowed tightly as he snapped, "If you have something to say, use words. Keep your hands to yourself." Lucas had long lost any shred of goodwill toward these people, parents who had chosen to give birth to her yet neglected her afterward. favoring another child to an absurd degree, still had the audacity to show up here claiming parental rights? The way they had acted since their arrival, spewing accusations and complaints without a single kind word, only confirmed his disdain. And Brandon? He came here pretending to care for Leah. Yet he didn't even understand the basics of her family situation. He had the nerve to bring along her parents, who clearly had no intention of making peace. And now, here he was, babbling something about long time no see, while wearing a mask of concern. It was pathetic. Lucas's grip on Brandon's wrist was firm, and the pain visibly twisted Brandon's expression. Though he clenched his teeth to keep from crying out, it was clear the physical discomfort paled in comparison to the anguish swelling in his chest. Brandon no longer dared to step closer, standing just out of Lucas's reach, his face pale. He began to speak in a strained voice. "Leah, it's not like that. I've liked you from the beginning, even before you left. I was just too slow to realize it. But during the 5 years you've been gone, I've been living in constant pain, like a knife cutting into me every single day. I dreamed about seeing you again, about telling you how sorry I am, how much I regret everything. Please, can you give me another chance?" As I looked at him, eyes filled with desperation, I felt no sympathy, no softening of my heart. I stood there silently, watching him perform his sorrowful act, my expression unreadable. Inside, however, I felt nothing but indifference, calculating how much of his sincerity was genuine at this moment. I couldn't tell. After all, with his acting skills, he had been able to convince me he loved me wholeheartedly while loving someone else. Now, who could say whether his words were real or fake? I didn't respond. His eyes fell on my hand, which was tightly held by Lucas, as if a realization struck him. His face grew agitated. "I get it. You're just still angry with me. Right, Leah? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, I looked into it. He's just someone you paid for. Isn't he? But those 7 years we spent together, that was real. I mean it. It was real. Look, I even brought our wedding rings. I had yours repaired and engraved with both our names. Promise, from now on, whatever you say goes. If you don't like the Robert family, I'll cut ties with them entirely. Please, Leah, don't leave me." By the time he finished, his voice was trembling with emotion. His display so heartfelt it made Tanner and May waver slightly. Could it be that he really loved me? They glanced at Lucas, their expressions uneasy. Their bond with me had started with money, and even though the past 5 years had deepened our relationship, could it truly replace the connection I once had with Brandon, who had been with me through so much? I shifted slightly, stepping forward and away from Lucas. He instinctively tightened his grip on my hand, his surprise evident. I turned back and gave him a reassuring smile, patting his hand gently. "Wait for me." Just 2 simple words. Yet they calmed Lucas's restless heart. Slowly, he released his hold on me. Seeing me step toward him, Brandon's face lit up momentarily, the faint trace of a smile forming, only to freeze completely the moment I spoke. "Brandon, why should I forgive you? I've worked so hard to almost leave my past behind, and yet you show up and drag it back into my life. Wasn't it enough for you to make sure Robert could marry Tanner without any obstacles? I've already left, haven't I? If she can't hold on to her man, what does that have to do with me? You're begging me? Fine. Then let me beg you in return. Please, just leave me alone." After finishing with him, I turned my attention to the Robert family. They looked like they wanted to speak but held back. Eventually, I sighed. Regardless of everything, they were still my blood relatives. I couldn't bring myself to hurl cruel words at the parents who had given me life. Besides, arguing with them was pointless. They would only ever hear what they wanted to hear. "Father, Mother," I said calmly, "this will be the last time I call you that. After all, you've never truly treated me like your daughter. From now on, just pretend you only ever had one child. Robert." My voice was steady, my words of severance spoken as if they were a casual greeting. Upon hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Robert were utterly stunned. You can't mean that," Mr. Robert stammered, his finger trembling as he pointed at me, his voice faltering, unable to form a complete sentence. Mrs. Robert stood frozen in place, as though she had never imagined her obedient and submissive eldest daughter, who always endured everything silently, would rise up for the first time, and even go so far as to cut ties with her. The disbelief in her eyes was gradually giving way to reality. Yet, in her heart, panic outweighed anger. We're your parents. We gave birth to you, raised you all these years. Do you think you can just say we're not your parents and make it true? Among them, the calmest person was Robert Mia, my younger sister. Perhaps it was because my decision to sever ties had the least impact on her relationship with me. She smirked, her expression tinged with mockery. Sister, don't think you can scare Mom and Dad with this act. No matter what you do, they'll never care about you. Mia thought I was joking when I said I wanted to cut ties. After speaking, she pouted coquettishly at Brandon. Brother Brandon, my sister is being so unreasonable. You should take care of her. I was lost in my own world, entirely indifferent to their refusal to leave. Calmly, I took out my phone and made a call. After all, as the owner of a private island, I wasn't shy about spending money on security to prevent disturbances. Usually, the need didn't arise, but now was clearly an exception. The guards arrived quickly. Since this was North America, they were even armed. The sound of guns being loaded echoed loudly, and the four of them finally realized, to their shock, that I truly intended to sever ties with them. Mr. and Mrs. Robert hastily stood up, helped by Mia and Brandon, as they stumbled toward the boat. As the boat departed from Reunion Island, Mia, full of resentment, turned to scold her parents. However, she saw them staring blankly at the island, lost in thought. The words she wanted to say got caught in her throat. Turning to observe Brandon's reaction, what she saw only deepened her despair. It wasn't just Mr. and Mrs. Robert who were reluctant to leave. Brandon's gaze was fixed on the island, his eyes filled with longing and sorrow, far surpassing the regret of her parents. Realizing this, Mia broke down and screamed, finally drawing the attention of everyone else. In the past, her parents would have been heartbroken to see her upset and would have tenderly asked what was wrong before joining her in cursing me. But this time, their reaction was completely different. The sharp sting of a slap rang out, the sound spreading from her reddened cheek. She stood there, eyes wide with disbelief, tears of indignation welling but not yet falling, as Mr. Robert's voice, filled with disgust, thundered in her ears. Crying, crying, always crying. That's all you know how to do. From childhood to now, your sister has given up so much for you. And now, because of you, she doesn't even acknowledge us as her parents anymore. What else do you want? Mrs. Robert didn't raise a hand but looked at her daughter with disappointment. Mia, why can't you learn to be more considerate? The words, so familiar, were ones I had heard countless times before. Brandon, who once couldn't bear to see Mia face the slightest grievance, now only stood there coldly, not uttering a word to stop what was happening. Mia couldn't understand. Why was it that just seeing me once made them all change so much? Before I could make sense of it, their boat had completely left Reunion Island. On the other side, after expelling the intruders, the guards boarded their own small vessel and departed. The crowd dispersed, and among the fading figures outside, a lone person emerged. Adam. He had rowed a small boat to the island, revealing himself as the dust settled. Compared to the four people I had just driven away, his attitude was much better, even though I didn't pay much attention to him back then. Seeing him now, Brandon remained on alert. Lately, too many people had come looking for me. He was wary of letting anyone take advantage and steal me away. His expression made me chuckle softly. When I saw the tips of his ears redden, I couldn't hold back a teasing smile. I gently brushed my fingers over the back of his hand to soothe him. Go ahead. I'll talk to him for a moment. Reluctantly, Brandon took a few steps back, glancing over his shoulder every other step. His hesitation and unwillingness to leave were so obvious that I couldn't help but laugh again. His clinginess wasn't something I disliked. It was endearing. Watching our interaction, Adam's expression didn't betray much, but deep down, he felt as though he were plunging into an abyss. When I turned back to him, he forced a bitter smile. Leah. His voice trembled slightly. I tilted my head, watching him remove his shoes and socks, rolling up his pants before stepping barefoot onto the damp shore. The icy water didn't deter him in the slightest, though his eyes held a deep confusion. "Why are you here again?" My tone carried a detachment entirely different from the warmth I showed to Brandon. "Am I not welcome?" he asked softly. "I truly just wanted to see you." I didn't stop him from stepping onto the island. Adam seemed a bit relieved, as though it meant that in my heart, he wasn't as unwelcome as the Robert family or Brandon. Noticing my gaze linger in the direction of Brandon as he walked away, Adam hesitated briefly before speaking again. "Just as a friend." I didn't look at him. My eyes remained fixed on the distant horizon, my voice calm and steady, devoid of any discernible emotion. "I don't want to be friends with any of you." Adam fell silent, waiting quietly for me to finish speaking. "But fine," I said at last. "I don't entirely dislike you, at least in the past. You didn't do anything wrong to me. You just didn't like me. Loving someone doesn't mean that love will be reciprocated. It's something I chose to endure. And later, regardless of your intentions, at least you never hurt me. You even saved my life." I paused, my gaze still distant. "But now, I have a new life, a new family, a new love. In their world, I'm the center of everything. And I love living this way." Not wanting to be disturbed further, I finally turned to look directly at him. He lowered his head, unable to speak, a faint air of pity surrounding him. The words he seemed to want to say got stuck in his throat, rendering him silent and helpless. I sighed softly. "All right then. Welcome as a guest. But only as a friend." After saying this, I waved him off, not lingering any longer. Whether he chose to stay or leave, it didn't matter to me. There had never been any deep grudges between us, just tangled emotions from the past. But the scars on my heart had long since healed, carried away by the passage of time. I had already moved forward toward a new life. Why should I dwell on the past? What mattered now was that I was happy. The radiant sunset bathed the ocean in golden hues. I walked across the sand and pebbles, my steps quickening toward the future I had embraced. From a distance, I could hear Brandon responding to my call. He stood waiting not far ahead. As I ran toward him, he turned and smiled brightly, his expression glowing with warmth. When I jumped into his arms, he held me tightly, his embrace solid and comforting. From afar, Adam stood watching, his gaze fixed on us. In Brandon's eyes, he could see a silent but unmistakable challenge, a quiet assertion of victory. Adam scoffed under his breath. If I hadn't chosen wrong back then, he thought, things wouldn't have turned out like this. If I hadn't made that mistake, she would be running into my arms right now. But life doesn't allow for what ifs.